So I'm starting the intro. I'm recording the intro bit before I actually do the full blown podcast. Just to kind of talk to you about what's going to be happening with this podcast. I know there was the Byronite podcast for a long time, which I enjoyed doing, but I just ran out of time to do it every week. So I'm just going to kind of tell you about how I'm going to start doing this. So this is the CEW podcast. I don't know if there's going to be a set schedule for it. I don't think it's going to be weekly. I don't even know if it's going to be bi-weekly. I feel like it's just going to be when I feel like there's something I need to talk about. So let's talk about small little things. I want to try and talk a lot about sort of CEW, how I'm feeling about it, what kind of like I feel like the general perception of the show is. I'm probably going to start reading like comments from people as well about shows, so just a heads up from now on. If you comment on episodes, there's a chance that you could potentially get, essentially a shout out on the podcast. I know it doesn't mean a lot, but it's a pretty cool thing. I'm going to try and focus on all things wrestling. So I feel like this is going to be typically a core podcast. So if you have any kind of like topics about like core related things that you want me to talk about, then let me know and I'll see what I can do. But I kind of also want it to just be, if we want to talk about AEW stuff, we can talk about that. If we want to talk about WWE stuff, we can do that. Impact, we can talk about Impact. I like Impact, so we can talk about that. Just sort of anything wrestling related. But mainly, I want this to kind of be a core podcast. And obviously, today's episode, if you could tell by the title, it is the Kingdom of Glory Creators Commentary. Now, again, disclaimer, I'm going to be biased about things. I'm going to be kind of, talking about it from the creator perspective, i.e. my perspective, and I'm going to be talking about what I personally enjoyed as well as what I know people enjoyed, because for those that don't know and for those that aren't a part of it, we do indeed have a Discord. I'm probably going to try and leave a link in the description, and every single episode of Retro, every pay-per-view, we have a watch party, so it means that I'm able to really get feedback, and I've kind of kept a mental note of it. I'm going to write some notes down when I get round to recording the full part of the podcast, and yeah, I'm just going to talk about how I felt, how other people felt, and just sort of the general reactions to things, and if there were any plan changes, because there were a few. There were actually a few, so you're going to be getting scoops on this podcast. So yeah, that's enough of an intro. Let's just get on with the rest of it. So I think first thing I'm going to do is an overall thoughts on the show, what I thought went well and what I think could be improved in the future. Now, obviously, this was the first massive show, the first pay-per-view I've done on 2K22, despite the fact that I've gone on record saying I didn't want to do Kingdom of Glory on 2K22, and now look at me, look what happened. But honestly, I think it went very, very well for my first proper big show, being a little bit adventurous, being a little bit crazy with what 2K22 provides. What did I think went well? Pacing, I think, was very, very good for most of it. There was a few issues which we'll get into when we go through the match-by-match kind of section of each night. What else went well? I really, really liked the Japanese deathmatch. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot throughout this entire thing. So if you've only got time to watch like one match from the entire weekend, my advice is go back and watch Jacob Campbell versus Braxton Myers. I think that match was phenomenal. I think it's one of the most ambitious matches I've done, and I think it's just really, really, really good. What else went well? I just like the matches. I think the matches were also good for what I'm able to do right now on 2K22. Obviously, the bar is now set. I'm always aiming higher. Every show I do, I aim higher. Just a little bit every time. So, the bar's been set, and then there's all that. What could be improved? This is more so a retrospective. The build to some matches. Obviously, I don't want every show to be 2 hours long. I didn't want every episode of Retro to be like 2 hours long. But for Future and for Mayhem, etc., not so much Explosion, but definitely Mayhem, you're going to be seeing a lot more story-driven shows. Basically, if you're not booked for stories, then you're probably not going to be seeing people. Just because, as much as it's cool to give characters that aren't involved in storylines matches to help build them up for when they're going to be in stories, there's only so much time you have, especially when you're creating content on YouTube. My goal is to give you guys stories, give you guys shows, and just put on a little bit of entertainment, you know? So that's why I keep my shows to about an hour and a half for the weekly shows, i.e. your retros, and now after Kingdom of Glory, your mayhems. So I need to make sure that that hour and a half, or that hour, is as packed full of storyline as possible. So sometimes it means that certain matches are going to naturally have less build, and that's just how wrestling works. Not every feud is going to be built as a main event story, and some feuds are just going to have just enough build that, you know, it works for the show that you're putting it on. But I feel like I could have done more for some of the matches. I would say certain ones, but I'm building different things off of what happened at Kingdom of Glory, which you'll learn about, like I said, come the match by match review. What else could have been improved? I feel like I could have gone a little bit more ham on certain matches, but again, it just is what it is. You know, it's my first time really going ham on 2K22, so naturally it's not gonna be perfect. And I'll give you my overall grade on where I think Kingdom of Glory was at the end of this podcast. So now that I've spoken about my overall thoughts, let's just get on with the rest of the show. We're going bit by bit here, and we are kicking things off with the pre-show. That's right, we got graphics, we got moving things. We're going insane here. We start off with the pre-show, and honestly, I really like the pre-show. 2 hours of just wrestling. How many matches? I'm trying to work it out here. I think there's like 9 apiece, so 18 matches, I think, roughly, on the pre-show. I'm probably wrong, and it's probably more like it is 10 matches per, but it was 10-person gauntlets, known as the Gauntlet for Glory matches. The men's was for a title shot that isn't the world title, anytime, any place, but it has to be announced in advance. And the women's was for the brand new CEW Network Championship. So both had their own stakes, both had their own intrigues, and I think there was, apart from the women's one, which I'll use the predictions that I get on Discord as a way to kind of back this up. But I feel like there was a lot of people that could have won on both sides. Obviously, the women's one, I feel like, was a little bit on the predictable side, but at the same time, I feel like predictable isn't always bad, especially in wrestling. I feel like way too many people try and go down the unpredictable route. But when it came to the women's one, I feel like it very much had to be Christine Rosario that won, because everyone really likes Christine Rosario. I see a lot of people digging what Christine Rosario brings to the table, and obviously I didn't have her near the IC or the Women's World title because, you know, granted, she could go after the Women's IC title and it would have been interesting, but I feel like her stakes were really in the Women's World title picture, and because of the match that happened for the Women's World title at Kingdom of Glory, I couldn't have Christine in that matchup, despite originally planning that. Now, I will get on to that once we get to Night 2, but I'll briefly touch on it. Originally, I think the plan was actually going to be a triple threat at Kingdom of Glory, between Christine Rosario, Mayu Shigata, and Sky Simmons, which I ultimately dropped in favor of Mayu versus Sky, which I think was the right idea to go with. So I honestly think that the women's Gauntlet for Glory match was really good. It introduced people to Jody Grimes of EPW, who I think people really liked. You know, it introduced maybe some people who don't watch the EPW stuff to Cyril Dawn, who's a really interesting individual. And yeah, I honestly think there was a lot of really good matches. We threw back to Nida versus Alexis. Jessica got a little bit of moment in the spotlight. We saw a new side of Trish Renee, which is going to be explored on both EPW and CEW. Just a little heads up on that one. And honestly, I think if I was thinking about it just really quickly off the top of my head, because I didn't give my ratings on my notes, I would probably give the Women's Gauntlet for Glory match a solid 4 out of 5. I do think that there were times where I think I could have gone a little bit more creative and maybe done a little bit more with certain people, but I think it was a very, very solid gauntlet. The latter half really, really upped it. So I think it could even be like a 4.25 if you really want to go like Meltzer style, but I only really go like 4, 4.55, etc. The Men's Gauntlet for Glory, I think, is a solid 4.5. Storylines throughout the entire gauntlet, things that are going to be touched upon once we get back into the weekly show system. You know, you got the Adam Adams, Bradley British storyline in there. You had Juice doing really well. Jason Anderson looked like a monster despite losing straight away to Justin Juice Baton. You know, ATJ once again, you know, proving why he's probably in the upper echelons of CEW. You had Leon and Tony Ford, who have known each other and have wrestled each other quite a bit, getting back into the ring with each other and that creative magic. Zorox had his moments. Hubert Jackson came back. Like, Joshua Walker also did really well. I really do think that this Men's Gauntlet for Glory match was really good too. And I think both of them served their purposes. You know, the Network Championship was just all about who was going to make history. That was Christine Rosario. And then for the Men's Gauntlet for Glory match, it was a championship shot at stake. So everyone just wanted to win matches quickly. And then when you got to the final stages, ATJ wanted to win quickly, but he was just so fatigued. He had, you know, gone through Leon and Zorox that the match with Hubert went longer than, like, I think a lot of people were probably expecting. And I think it just led to some really cool things. You know, you got the handshake between Hubert and ATJ as well, which, you know, it is sure to add some... there's going to be something you have to be wondering. And again, I think it was really good. The best matches from that, I would say Nyda Radamick and Alexis Nova had a really good match in the gauntlet. Tony Cross and Christine Rosario, Cyrell and Christine, Cyrell and Nyda, so definitely the latter half of the gauntlet. I also think that Bannon and Jody Grimes had a pretty decent matchup. Then on the men's side, Walker and Juice had a good match. ATJ and Leon, ATJ and Zorox, ATJ and Hubert. And then I also think that for what it's worth, Leon and Tony had a pretty banger of a matchup as well. So that is the pre-show. So now we move on to Night 1. And Night 1, I really enjoyed. I think it was a really, really solid card, a really, really solid night of wrestling. And I think that some of the things that happened on this show were really, really, really good. So we're going to go ahead. We got some audience and personal perception for each match. We're going to give a little match-by-match kind of rundown very shortly. Well, I say shortly, and then this is going to be like an hour long, knowing me. And then I'm going to give my match of the night for this one. So we kicked things off with the 4-pack challenge between the Women's Intercontinental Champion Eliza Stone, Alice Redson, Eileen Beck, and Elizabeth Payne. I really, really liked the match. It was a solid match. Everyone who was in the watch party, there was no complaints. People really liked it. People got into it, which is always the important thing. You know, people can like it. But if they're not into it, then you can just tell that there's a little bit of a disconnect. But people were really into this matchup. I think the booking was good as well. You know, we kept Alice Redson looking strong. I think the only thing I would have changed would have had Eileen Beck lasting a little bit longer in the matchup, but that's what happens when you kind of have to let the 2KAI deal with stuff as well. I think overall I would give the matchup a solid, I'd say a 3.5 out of 5. It was a really good match, but nothing super standoutish about it. It's just your standard 4-pack challenge matchup. Kyle Young versus Trent X. Now, I think I liked it. I think a lot of people also kind of digged it. The story really was all about Trent knowing the counter to Kyle Shirayama at every single turn, and I think that was really, really good. It shows that Trent has not only gone away and has improved as a performer, but also as a tactician and a strategist. And I think people really, really like the ending, which was the superplex into the XFX spot, which I think is a stroke of genius, and it could very well be a staple of Trent X's moveset to come. I think it's a really, really good move. It's a little bit of highlight reel, so, you know, it is what it is, but I think this matchup, once again, I think I'm going to put it at 3.5 out of 5, personally. And I just want to say that if you guys want to give your ratings to the matchups in the comments below, feel free. I love to hear it. If you guys say that a match was a 1 out of 5, that's fine. Let me know why. I'm down to have a civil conversation with people. That's all I'm going to say. Then we move on to the Violent Regime versus Jade Young and G. It could have been better. That's all I'm going to say. I think the matchup was okay. I think it delivered, despite the fact that 2K decided to have the match at like 80% speed. It felt a little bit slow, but that's just not my fault. There's nothing I can do about that, unfortunately. I personally think the build was good. It could have been better. It could have been a lot better, but it was really a quick build because I'll just keep it real. A little bit of a shoot here. I wanted to get as many people on the card as possible, and notable names were Christina Dean, Tony Taylor, G, and Jade Young. So I said, you know what, let's have a tag match. It makes sense. Jade and G, they're an SED together. You know, they've got that kind of like, they got that bond, they got that connection, and then Violent Regime is obviously, they're all about chaos, and, you know, they've gone after G and Jade in the past, so it just makes sense, you know. And again, the finish itself leads very well into future plans. I won't be spoiling them, but you know, it just goes to show you that this isn't over just yet. People weren't as into it as I expected, but you know, not every match will be a banger to everyone. If you try and go 5-star matches every single time, you're just going to drain people out by the time that the main event rolls around. I will give this matchup a 2.5 out of 5. And I don't know if that's me being a bit harsh, but it's just, I think personally for me, I could have done a bit more with this. Then we move on to the title versus title match, and I think this is one of my personal favourites. Fun little factoid, I've had this matchup and its result in place since Down in Flames all the way back in last November. So about 9 months I've had this in place. And honestly, it couldn't have gone down better. Really, really good result. People seem to click with the result, which I'll just say. Darius cashed in and won both belts. And you know what? It was really well received. I really like the matchup. I think Jinku and Shane work really well together. And honestly, it's just going to be a very, very good, very, very interesting story with Darius as the double champion and what that means for Jinku and Shane in the future. I'll give this matchup, you know, because Jinku versus Shane absolutely slapped, you know. It was a hardcore match, it's a little bit spot festy, but I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think it was a really, really solid matchup. And it's one of those ones that I would say definitely watch it. And now we move on to the matchup that I feel like a lot of people are gonna expect me to talk about for ages. The Japanese Death Match. The match that made people say, and I quote, "Why is this the night 1 card?" I think it was a near perfect match. It's not a spot fest, kind of. It wasn't a flippy match. It was just a hard-hitting, weapons galore match. And I think that's what sums up Braxton Myers and Jacob Campbell perfectly. It was my first time ever using thumbtack and barbed wire texture spots, and let me just say, I really like doing that, and now that I have the textures on 2K22, you might see me do it a little bit more. Obviously not too much. You don't want to oversaturate it and then it loses its ability to get a pop, and it loses its ability to look deadly at that point. I really do think that the match was really good. I think the story was really, really good of Jacob doing everything in his power to keep Braxton down. Braxton trying, but he just got, like, outsped, outmaneuvered, and just kind of overall, in a way, despite the height and the strength advantage, just overpowered by Jacob Campbell. And that finish, the finish to the matchup, to me, was godlike. The gorilla press off the Trons was nuts, and I think it will go down as an all-time CEW moment. 4.5 out of 5, almost a 5. Almost a 5. I think there was a little bit of time where I feel like it could have gone a little bit harder, a little bit more hard hitting, and I think it could have been a 5. But it's a very, very good matchup, and like I said, if there's one match that you watch throughout the week, go and watch Jacob versus Braxton if you're into that kind of stuff, and really what you can do with custom textures and a little bit of imagination. And then we move on to the main event of night 1, Blake Payne versus Stanley Owens. And I think it's a perfect way for Blake's reign to end and Stanley's to start. It was a really, really good match. The story was, can Stanley handle it? And the fact that Elizabeth was there constantly distracting Stanley, I think really, really worked, because it showed that every time Stanley was close, something would happen to throw him off of his game, and Blake was there to try and pick up the pieces. Now, obviously, that wasn't the case, and Blake ended up losing the championship, which I know some people were kind of shocked by, but I feel like there's, you know, the story of Blake as champion, I think, was coming to an end very, very shortly. So if it wasn't at Kingdom of Glory, it would have been at Fight Forever. I'm just going to keep that real with you. So Stanley Owens being champion now, I think, is really, really good. And the one thing that I said was that this match could have been longer, but it's 2K20. So I think the precedent now is to expect to see matches that are more fast-paced and quick within CEW. But I'm going to try and find a way to make these matches a little less 15-minute balls to the walls barn burners, and more so, let's see if we can try and make them 20 to 25 minute, a little bit more slower, a little bit more grounded, more story to them. Match of the night, Japanese death match, closely followed by Blake versus Stanley, then the title versus title match. I think any one of those 3 matches, I think you could watch, and I think you dig what CEW has to offer. And I think overall, I would give this night, I'm not going to do averages, I'm just going to think of it as a whole, a solid 4 out of 5. There were some moments that dragged it down, but it was overall a very, very solid show. Now, I don't have any notes on night 2, so you're just going to have to bear with me whilst I go through memory. But anyway, let's get on with night 2, and we kicked things off with the Controller Tav rules match, Kyrie Sampson versus what should have been Charlotte Yuri, but then the bombshell was dropped that Charlotte Yuri isn't even the leader of Controller Tav. What? I know. It's an absolute mind. Oh my god, my mind's blown. And Usha Falls was revealed to be the leader. So we got Kyrie Sampson versus Usha Falls, which, you know what, I'm just gonna say it. It is Usha's biggest match to date. Obviously, she won the Queen of the Ring. She beat a bunch of talented individuals to get to that. But this was a matchup against a former women's champion in Kyrie. And I think the story of Usha standing her own and, if anything, dominating the matchup for a lot of time, I think now shows that she's ready to be women's world champion. She's got that Queen of the Ring briefcase. She can choose her destiny basically at any time. She's just got to announce it a week before it happens. So I think the matchup was good. Kyrie had her moments, but this was more so about establishing Usha as the leader and just how dangerous she can be. We then move on to Price Stevens versus the Bob Parks. And oh wait, hang on, I forgot to give a rating to Kyrie versus Usha. 3.5, solid matchup, nothing super crazy. Again, it was more so the story aspect than anything. But really good match. Then we move on to the Bob Parks versus Price Stevens. And we got a cameo from Brian Portland, who introduced the Bob Parks. And I think that was the perfect way to introduce the Bob Parks for Kingdom of Glory. And this match was brilliant. I really liked working on it. All because of the fact that Bob Parks has Price's finisher, the pay the price. He calls it the ratings boost, as you'll see. So I decided I'm going to give Price the last shot and call it the Price cut, or the moment of glory, as Bob Parks calls it, into his moveset. So these two were hitting each other's finishers. There was a spot where both men went for the moment of glory and ducked. I thought, when I did that, I was popping off whilst I was working on the match. I'll tell you that now. I really liked the story as well, which was Price gunning for revenge. He almost got it, but in the end, Bob Parks is just the better singles wrestler, and he was able to get the win. And now we don't know what the future holds for the Bob Parks, but it's sure to be an interesting one. I would give this matchup a 4 out of 5. I think it was really good. I think you'll hear me say this, it could have just been that little bit longer, and I think some people would have probably digged it, and I think digged it a little bit more, and it probably would bump it up to a 5. Then after that, we have the Cheyenne Invitational, and it was revealed that Cheyenne was going to try and take the easy way out by bringing in someone who was basically like an enhancement talent. And then Byron was like, no, you're not doing that. And then in comes Amy Sutton, who recently won the REW Women's Championship, which was pretty wild when I watched that. And I think Cheyenne and Amy Sutton had a really good match. I really liked it. I think it's probably one of my favorite matches of the weekend. And I genuinely think that it's probably one of the better matches on night 2. I'm willing to give it at least a 4, maybe a 4.5. I think a 4 is fair, so I'll give it a 4. Amy Sutton won after locking in the KTL lock for quite a long time, and then Cheyenne tapped out, which, you know, who knows where that's gonna go. We then moved on to, dear God, the fatal 4-way ladder match. And this is where we get into shoot territory. That match took 45 minutes to record, and it was a 37-minute match when I edited it down with a couple cuts. The cuts were janky, but we had to do what we had to do because I'm not letting people sit there for 45 minutes to watch a damn ladder match. It was good. I really liked it. But it was just so long that it was a struggle to commentate. Rock and Rave Experience 1, lots of crazy moments, lots of things that are hopefully going to build up the tag division a bit more. I'm willing to give it a 3.5, maybe even a 4. I think a 3.5 is fair just because of how long it went. We're almost at the half-hour mark here with recording, but we're down to the last couple matches. We now move on to the Hell in a Cell match, Max McCarthy versus Alex Blade. And you know what? Could it have been longer? Yes. Do I think it should have been longer? No. I think it was perfect for what it is. It's two guys having a fight. You're not going to have a 30-minute classic if you're trying to basically injure the other person, because that was the whole story. Alex Blade wanted to take Max McCarthy out permanently. Max McCarthy wanted to injure Alex Blade to get revenge after everything that's happened since Invictus 2021. Was that Invictus 2021? More like Fight Forever. Maybe even earlier than that, like April 2021. It's been a while. It's been a long time. Max took 2 insane bumps, and quite frankly, the fact that the game no sells helped make Max look like a damn lunatic, and that really worked for the match. The match ended with the Unbreakable Flow through the cell, through a table, and then the final splash, a little shaded Nick Sullivan, for Max McCarthy to get the win. And I think from a storytelling perspective, I think you got to give it at least a 4.5. Could it have been longer? Yeah. But like I said, should it have been longer? I don't think so. I think I might give this a 5. I think this might be match of the show. At least from a storytelling perspective. So I might do 2 matches of the show. I think from a storytelling perspective, it's either this or the main event of night 2, which I'll get onto in a second. Yeah, I'll give this matchup a 4.5. I think it's a really, really good matchup. But I feel like there were a few small things that I could have tuned up just a little bit to make it that 5 that 5 out of 5. And now we move on to the main event of night 2, the finale of Kingdom of Glory, Mayu Shigata, Sky Simmons, Women's World Championship. And there was a promo package at the end of the just before the matchup, just to kind of remind you all, hey, these two were friends. They're no longer. Sky's changed. Mayu's determined that, you know, she's gonna get some revenge. The one thing that I find funny that no one pointed out, because I feel like people don't realize I use colors a lot, and I use gear and stuff to help reflect stuff. Mayu and Sky throughout the entire build up to Kingdom of Glory would wear kind of yin-yang colors. So if Sky was wearing more black than white, Mayu would be wearing more white than black, basically. And then at Kingdom of Glory, Sky came out in the colors of the Violet regime. And I thought people were going to pick up on that. They didn't. A little bit gutting. But it's a small little feature that I feel like if you listen to this podcast, you're now going to be wondering, why did Byron do that? And if you're wondering that, then maybe you'll tune into Mayhem when that rolls around. Who knows? Who knows? I think the matchup was brilliant. I think, again, from a storytelling perspective, this was the best told story of Kingdom of Glory. Because it was, will Mayu actually put Sky away when she has the chance? And at first it looked like she wasn't going to. Sky was just taking advantage every 5 seconds. But Mayu stood up for herself, composed herself, and walked away with the Women's World Championship. After 3 honourable souls, 2 back-to-back to end the matchup. And I'm going to give this matchup a 5. I'm going to do it. You know what? Call me biased. I don't care. I think this is the best told story of all of Kingdom of Glory. Argue with the wall, because I ain't listening. I'm keeping it real. I think this was my favourite story of Kingdom of Glory. But here's the thing. This is arguably only chapter 1 of the Mayu and Sky thing. Because now we gotta see what happens after Kingdom of Glory. Are they gonna find common ground? Are they not? What's gonna happen? Are we gonna see twists? Are we gonna see turns? You're gonna have to tune in and find out. And that's what I really liked about that. Because again, I even said it on commentary. Mayu was gonna try and shake Sky's hand after the match, but Sky had left. She went out the ring. She was done. What's gonna happen? So I genuinely think from storytelling perspective, this was the match. And I think also from in-ring, it was really good. So I think it's a 5. I genuinely believe it's a 5. So, match of the night, Sky vs. Mayu. That's all I'm going to say. And then, finally, we're going to wrap it up with match of the show. Ooh. So it's either the Japanese deathmatch or Sky vs. Mayu. And I'll say both, from different perspectives. The Japanese deathmatch, if you're looking for something to just go, oh my god, this was nuts. And if you want one of the core stories of CEW to be told to you, watch Sky vs. Mayu. This is if you're a new person tuning in to this podcast. And now, I guess what I say is, real quick for the ending, is thank you. These pay-per-views take a while. A lot of planning. Like I said, Kingdom of Glory was kind of finalized since November last year. It's been 9 months in the making, roughly. Technically, it's been about a year, about 7 months. It's about 19 months of planning since Mania 3. There's been a few twists and turns, a few little things. We've had ZK show up, that's pretty wild. We've had new people thrown into the mix. And, quite frankly, you know, I don't think I'm done. I was really, really kind of thinking, what happens if I get to Kingdom of Glory and then that's it? I feel like I'm completely done, at least for a while. But no, I'm really, really excited to get back to work on it. I'm taking a month off to plan stuff for people. I'm going to be talking to people, getting stuff lined up, ready to go. And then after that, we are going to be back with Mayhem Episode 1 and Explosion Episode 1 as close to each other as physically possible. And then at the same time, you're also going to be getting Europe's Finest, which should be very, very soon, because I'm probably going to upload this, but it might already be out, actually. It depends on when I upload this, because it's a very, very long podcast, so I might cut it down just a little bit. And then, yeah, like I said, just thank you all for being a part of the journey. Thank you all for dealing with the fact that a 10-month build, like a 10-month calendar, got done in 19 months. I want to thank you all for putting up with that, and putting up with the fact that, you know, life, it gets busy. I'm going to be getting busy again. I'm going back to college. I'm doing my level 5, basically my higher national diploma. And yeah, who knows how much time I'm going to have to get these shows done. Things might take longer than I think. Things might take longer than I want them to take. But that just happens. I'm trying to line something up for October, but with how 2K22 is, I don't know. So I'm going to wrap up here before I start talking for like another 22 minutes and we're on like an hour. This has been the CEW podcast. I kind of like the long format, just kind of unedited, raw. We just kind of do it. And then, yeah, that's it. So I've been Byron. This has been the CEW podcast, and I will see you all next time.